Well, welcome. Thank you so much, as always, for choosing to spend your very valuable time here. And trust me, you won't regret it. We've got a great show lined up for you here today. We're meeting with Tania Khazaal, and we're going to be talking about the feminine shift, how to lead, sell, and serve without force, something that is totally in line with the art of feminine negotiation. So you can see why I wanted Tania here. So welcome, Tania.
Thank you, Cindy, for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great one. And for those, in case you don't happen to know her, Tanya is a former corporate strategist turned seven-figure founder, best-selling author, mother of two. She's busy and very successful across all planes in her life. And she now helps women create aligned success with the emphasis on aligned so that you're not sacrificing your health, your family, or your femininity. So let's jump right in, Tanya. I like to often start with mindset because I typically say it's our
Yes.
and most important negotiation, and it's often never looked at that way. Now, your journey has been quite extraordinary, from living out of your car to building a thriving brand with a newborn, no less. And it suggests to me that you may have some powerful insights on how to master our mindset. So I was wondering, was there a pivotal moment for you that shifted your mindset from that sort of survival mode to building this thriving brand?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing for me is, there's different parts of my life that caused, hitting rock bottom, right? And I think in that rock bottom is when you're forced to surrender. And I think it's when I realized the power of surrendering to something so much bigger than us that really shifted my mindset. I realized that when I'm trying to handle and control everything myself, it feels so heavy. It feels very daunting. And it almost feels like I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel because I can't figure out all the answers.
Yeah.
But in that rock bottom where you feel like you've got nothing else to lose is when I surrendered and I realized that I'm not just by myself, I'm co-creating with God. And so a lot of my mindset comes faith driven. Faith driven in a sense of I do what I have to do and what I know I should do through inspired and aligned action. And I leave the how to something bigger than me. And so it doesn't put on that weight so much on my mind. I would say that's one of the biggest pivotal things that I've learned by hitting rock bottom multiple times in my life.
Yeah, that was a hard learning curve for me. I've got to be honest. It's certainly, long term as a lawyer, you're wanting and expected to control all of the balls all of the time. And then that ripples over into other areas of your life. And I love that book, Surrender. So for our listeners, I want you to really, it's a great kickstart to the conversation because if you take nothing else away, allowing yourself to just surrender and breathe into the moment and into the bigger picture can be a game changer. So let's talk about success for a moment, because one of the reasons I started Women on Purpose and Art of Feminine Negotiation was, as I was saying, that lawyer needing to control everything, and I wanted to shift away from what I saw as learned concepts of competition, I guess, as the definition for success, right? Like exerting power over others rather than power with. And you seem to share that philosophy. So I was wondering, what's one belief that maybe you had about success that you had to unlearn, or did you?
Yeah, so, oh man, I can go down this rabbit hole, but I would say, like, based on this conversation, one of the biggest learned behaviors that I had to destruct and try to help other people is the external validation, right? When you think about as a lawyer and all of the stuff, when you think about schooling and when you think about growing up, it was always the grades, the performance reviews at jobs, everything. So I feel like at a young age, we were taught external validation. We need people to tell us that we're great. We need people to tell us that we're doing a good job, that we're beautiful, that we're on track, that we're successful, right? And so we tied our success to how much our output is. And that couldn't be further from the truth when I started to realize, why aren't we taught that inner worth, the inner confidence, the inner compass, all of the things, which ties into the comparison that you mentioned, is because that forces us at such a young age to be trapped into that comparison mindset. Oh, well, they're doing better. They got better grades. They got a better performance. They got better, more promotions, right? Versus what are my gifts? What am I doing here? Who am I? Like, definitely, who am I? And for me, when you tap into that kind of inner confidence, that is success to me because then that thrives and that comes out and bleeds into in a good way into your marriage, into your relationships, into how you're showing up in your work and your purpose and all the things.
I love that, Tanya, and it's so simple. And it's funny because I ask this question frequently because it's, part of my mission is redefining success, and I haven't heard it framed that way before. But I mean, it makes sense on so many levels. And again, for our listeners, such a simple definition of success because your life will exponentially change when you start seeking validation internally. When you have that self-love piece down, that's permanent. Whereas the external will constantly change as other people come in your life, other job opportunities come in your life, and you will constantly be that hamster on a wheel. Whereas once you nail down, as Tanya says, that internal validation, then everything else falls into place. So I love that reframing of it. And I guess tied to that
Thank you.
sort of competitive model that we were talking about, one of the things I really hate about today's business culture, especially in the sales arena, but I think it ripples all over, is that constant grind, right? That hustle approach. And I think that mode is outdated. And I believe you speak to that a lot as well and definitely due for a change. So talk to me about your feminine path to wealth.
Yeah, so same thing because that ties into exchanging time for money, right? Everything that we're taught as we're growing up. And I feel like I was as a corporate, past corporate executive, I was the exact same way, right? I was thriving and multiple six figures and lavishly traveling the world, and it's all paid for and all of the things. And ironically enough, when I learned this lesson is when internally I was the unhappiest. Externally, I was thriving. I was great. I paid off all my debt, all of the stuff. But it was at the same time that my mother was on her deathbed from too many pharmaceuticals. It was the same time that I was fighting chronic anxiety. And I mean, Cindy, puking every single day for years, chronic anxiety, insomnia, endometriosis, IBS, all of it. I got stress induced highs from head to toe for 6 months.
Oh my God.
And ironically, this is what I was internalizing, but on the outside, everything seemed great. And so that's when I really started to dive in and understand my entire body is misaligned, regardless of the external success, regardless of how much money I'm making and all of the stuff. And when I started to take care of that, when I started to, which is hence why Tana the Herbalist was born and where I built my brand, is because I actually got off my mom off of her medications and her narcotics, and she was living again. She's still with us now. She's happy. She's thriving. She travels, all of the stuff. And it's that pivotal moment of, wait, why I can show up in ways that don't sacrifice my entire well-being, that actually thrives and helps me become more successful. And one of the biggest things that it taught me is breaking free. I'm all about breaking free from the systems and the constraints that they have on us, is that scarcity mindset. And not just scarcity in money, but I'm talking about scarcity of time and energy, because we're made to believe that I never have enough time. When I have more time, I'll do this, all of the stuff. But no, once again, you co-create that. And I find that I have more time now to do the stuff that I love and that are important to me, being a mom, in marriage, with the business, all of the things, than I did when I was working in the corporate world with no kids and no responsibilities in the same way. So,
And I love how you expanded the definition of scarcity because I think people often, when they think scarcity, they only think money. But you're right, it's scarce, that scarcity of time mindset, even scarcity of love, right? Like I'm unlovable or there's not enough love. And that's why people get so jealous and needy,
mm,
breaks down relationships. And I want to really put a pin for our listeners because Tanya drops some of this so cavalierly, and they're really powerful insights. Even that, think about most of the people you know in your life who are obscenely wealthy on that corporate trail, always looking for more acquisition and more acquisition and more competition. I can't think of one who is truly happy. And that's not to say you can't have abundance and
you got
oodle,
it.
but have it come from a place that's filled with passion and with purpose. So I love that you drew that insight that, hey, when I had all the external trappings, I actually wasn't happy. So I challenge our listeners as well to sit back and ask yourself, am I truly happy where I'm at right now? And one of the things I want to circle back to, Tanya, so I don't forget, when you were talking about I was having to balance this and I was balancing that and I had hives over my body, and I mean, when we were tied to sort of, I guess, avoiding that grind we were talking about, I'd love if you could chat about burnout, or what can we do about it?
Yeah. So just to kind of, I'm going to feel I'm going to kind of hit two birds, one stone right now, is because you mentioned how, the external success.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, well, what I teach as well is we talk about the four pillars of life. There's your inner world, right? Which is your mindset, your energy. But then there's your relationships and connections. And then there's your health and your well being. And then there's your vision and legacy. And a lot of the times we spend most of our lives focusing on one or two of those pillars and not focusing on the other two. And we think that it's okay, it's not as important, but that actually bleeds into the success. Right. And so this is why I'm all about like, yeah, man, you can have it all. Like, I don't care what anybody tells you. You can be thriving in all of them. There's just a way that you not only balance it, but different seasons you're spending more energy into each one of them. And that's how I'm now able to prevent burnout because I didn't understand it once upon a time where I find that burnout essentially comes from your body is constantly whispering at something needing attention and you're just ignoring it, right? And so some people will be like, oh, I'm burning out because I'm working too much. But maybe you're actually not burning out because you're working too much. Maybe you're burning out because you're not doing self-care. Your relationship hasn't been, had some TLC in a while and your marriage is lacking. A lot of people don't want to admit that or publicly have that conversation of this constraints at home or that your mommy guilt is so real and you haven't spent that quality time with your kids because your mind is racing about everybody else. A lot of the times burnout is actually coming from those pillars of life that you're not focusing on, that's bleeding into where you are spending your energy. And then you're blaming that burnout on this one thing, but it's really not stemming from there. That's what I've actually noticed.
Oh, that's a great insight. And again, we often forget that. You're right. And when I do workshops and that, I'll often ask people what their priorities are, and they invariably focus in one area, right? When you're asking about the balance in their life. And yet
Yes.
ask them then, what are the things that are the most important to you? Interestingly, the stuff the vast majority of us spend most of our time on aren't the things that we would say are the most important things, whether it's our intimate partner or our kids, loved ones, and we're chasing that golden goose egg because we've been so conditioned. And I know you do a lot of work as well with women in particular. And I find so many women lose touch with themselves, sometimes after motherhood or sometimes after empty nest at various points. What would be your top three strategies for sort of reclaiming that sense of identity and energy and purpose? I mean, one, I think clearly looking at all the various pillars in your life and making sure that you're blocking
Yeah.
time for them, scheduling them. But what are your top priorities?
So honestly, I would say the biggest thing that I've done for a long time, which has always helped me want to progress, is regardless of being a new mom, where you're at, too busy, too tired, you get up in the morning and you get ready.
Yeah.
Get ready, do your hair. If you don't wear makeup, that's okay, but look presentable because that energy alone just makes you feel better. I don't care what anybody says, no matter how tired, you will never, no matter how tired I'm, even with a newborn, watch me catching it like outside with a bun on my head, wearing my scrubs, all the stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because that energy resonates. It's vibrational, right? It's magnetic. The other thing that I say is really important is always finding something that you're excited about,
Yeah.
something that excites you, because that dopamine rush that you get, that serotonin rush, that fuels you. When you have that, that's what all of a sudden creates more time that you didn't have, that creates more energy that you didn't have, is because you're moving towards something that you're excited about. And the third thing I would say is future pacing. We
Yeah.
get so stuck in our current circumstances that we forget to be excited about a goal, something that we're thriving to be, who we want to be 1 year from now, where we want to be 1 year from now, and taking just baby steps, right? A lot of times we talk ourselves out of it because there's so many steps that are needed to get to this goal, not realizing that if I just spend, for example, 18 minutes a day, that's 100 hours a week. Do you know how much you can get done in a year? Sorry, 100 hours in a year, what you can do?
Yeah.
And so future pacing for me is really exciting because it's about painting the picture of where do I want to be? Where do I want to be with my kids? What do I want our life to look like? What is, when you, a lot of times I'm sure you ask people like, what's success to you? And it's like most of them automatically move to monetary, especially if they're struggling monetarily. Whereas, like for me, I teach, paint that picture. Let's just say you have it monetarily. What are you going to do with that? What is that image? Now reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
Get that image, reverse engineer on what you got to do to make it happen.
Yeah, and I love how this is sort of everything layering on because it goes back to when you're saying about just get yourself up and out and looking good so that you feel good because it absolutely it's magnetic. And even before that, it goes back to what you were saying before, Tanya, about that
Inner
internal.
confidence.
because you
in a right.
feel better about yourself. So you show up as a better version of yourself, which then attracts better things to be happening in your life. I think that's so powerful. And I want again for our listeners to really have you think, because I think this applies across the board, but for women in particular, and I'm sure you've seen this, Tanya, with your clients as well. We tend to be conditioned to put our needs on the back burner. So we don't allow ourselves to live into our dream. We're surviving the day, taking care of all the balls that need to be taken care of. And we don't future pace because we're like, well, one day that will, I call it one day living. One day that'll happen. Or, I just need to get to here, or when I'm done with this, or when the kids are in school, when the kids are out of school, it's always some future event,
Right.
but not with a goal specific to you. So again, challenge our listeners, as Tanya was saying, what is that 1 year, that 5 year, that 10-year goal? And what are some things you can be doing today to get yourself there? I love that. Now, I know you do a lot of great work for women who feel sort of unseen or stuck, and a lot of sort of purpose-driven work for them. So if you could whisper one piece of advice to every woman who feels unseen or stuck, what would it be?
You are not your role.
Mm,
Most women identify with their role. I'm a mom. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm a wife. I'm a this, but none of that is your identity. And when you start to really say, who am I? Right? Who am I? What did God put me here for? What am I meant to do? Like, why am I living this life? Why did I go through the lessons that I went through? Why did my childhood develop that way? Like, why did I go through the hardships? Like, who am I and what am I meant to bring to this world? When we ask those questions, we're almost forced to say, okay, wow, I can't be stuck in my title. I can't be stuck in my roles. There's so much more than this. And it's about saying, I have a duty. I have a duty to meet what that identity is and to learn and figure out and implement and move towards that sense of identity, and I cannot be stuck in my current role. Because I think the biggest thing is, for example, a lot of women that are stuck is a big one is I got to focus on my kids. Like that's my priority right now is I got to focus on my kids, which I understand is a huge priority. It's the most important thing for us. But
yeah,
when we don't take care of ourselves and what's important to us, you also teach that to your kids.
yeah,
And that for me is where I refuse to stay stuck or stagnant, is because I don't want to teach my kids to just be stuck and not thrive to be better and healthier and all of the things. And so it's like our duty to level up, because as moms, especially say, for example, stay at home moms or even workers, it's like we're still natural nurturers. We're still there with their kids. And if they see mommy who's like 80% more likely to get autoimmune disease because she's suppressing everything that she wants, that is creating a very normal state of mind for those kids. And so it's like you don't really have a choice to stay stuck unless you want to end up getting sick because your internal world is screaming that I want something more.
yeah. I love that. And our martyrdom doesn't serve. What kind of role modeling is that? And for me, I find
That's
that's
exactly
often
it.
for people because very few people we don't call each other out on that, right? When we show up and martyr ourselves, thinking that we're, be everything, it's all got to be about the kids. You're basically telling your daughters that they deserve less than the men in their life. And you're
Well,
telling,
because Cindy, we're taught to like you're getting a pat on your back for how much you're juggling. It's like the illusion of busyness, right? I'm so busy. Look at everything that I'm doing. I'm keeping so busy. I'm doing such a great job, which I'm sure you are.
yeah,
But
yeah.
outside of that illusion of busyness, what else are you doing?
And you can be a fabulous mom. It's not either or. It doesn't mean you can
Exactly.
only do that. You can be that and so much more. I think that's
That's
great.
right. That's
And I want
exactly it.
to really put a pin again for our listeners because I love what you were saying about the identity piece and how you frame that. And I love that it works at the micro and the macro level. Like you say, at that bigger level, right? Who do I want to be? What am I in this world for? And I encourage our listeners as well, even at the micro level, to start every conversation that you're going into, every negotiation, whether it's with your kids, your intimate partner, or a business deal, be intentional about who do I want to be in this conversation? How do I want to show up? What can I bring to the table that will allow everybody to be elevated in this? So that was a beautiful
Yeah,
insight.
that's why I talk about leading your life like a business. right? I always say, like, if you want to be the CEO of your life, you got to lead your life like a business, right? A business has missions and systems and strategies and effective communication in place because it thrives. And you need those same kind of systems in your life to be able to thrive that exact same way.
That's so good. And growth, right? At its basic, in business, everybody expects growth. And somehow in our lives, we often stagnate, right? Like
That's
build
right.
growth into your daily routine. Find things you can do out of your comfort zone to allow yourself to grow and be super intentional about it. Now, I know you definitely mentor women and would describe yourself as someone who mentors women when they're ready to take their power back. And I think that a lot of lip service gets paid to that term, and people don't really dig deep, and you dig a little deeper. So I'd love if you could talk about what taking your power back means to you and what that looks like in practical terms for women or men, frankly, who feel stuck or unseen.
Yeah, so that's exactly where I say, like, taking your power back is like I'm becoming the CEO of my life, not just in business. I want to become the CEO of my inner mind, like my mindset, my energy, all of the things. I want to become the CEO when I learn communication and how I'm connecting with people, my loved ones and my children. I'm the CEO of my well-being and my body and all of the things, but then also business and thriving and the vision and the legacy and all of that. So for me, it's like taking your power back is really saying, pardon my French, I'm the shit. Like I'm really good at like I'm happy that I'm progressing and doing all of this. And it's about deconstructing everything that we've been taught about, no, I don't have to play small. I don't have to shut up just to keep the peace. I don't have to do the way that I was almost programmed to just be this perfect, prim and proper woman, you know what I mean? Versus saying like, no, I'm me. And as long as I'm bettering myself and I'm showing up as me, I'm fully in my power. I'm the CEO. Like that's exactly it.
Yeah. And I think that running it like a business, it's a simple mindset shift, but one we're not accustomed to. And when I say simple, I mean just if you start thinking about your life as a business in the way Tanya's suggesting, I guarantee you, you will show up differently. You will make some different choices. You will have a different analysis about your life and where it's going.
Right.
You've talked a little bit about that purpose piece again and how we can rediscover, hey, yeah, I've got all these external things, but I'm not really happy. So, for our listeners who feel they've lost their way, and by that I mean in terms of purpose and passion, and we're seeing more and more of that sadly in today's polarized and very divided world, what kind of practical advice do you have for how maybe we can kickstart to rediscover our purpose?
Yeah. So the number one thing that I would say is it's like in our innate nature to love to help people, right? And sometimes it's digging into your childhood. What did you love to do as a child before the world told you who to be and how to be? What did you love to do? What did you gravitate to? Were you the observer? Were you the communicator? Were you the dancer? Were you the vocal one? Were you the introvert? Like thinking back on how was I before I was molded into being some kind of way?
Yeah.
But more than that, I truly believe that we have a lot of purpose behind our story. And I think that's where a lot of people misunderstand that is because they're afraid of their wounds
Yeah.
and not realizing that they should be sharing those scars that they've created. So for example, I've helped women create businesses from their divorce story, from
Yeah.
their health stories, because a lot of the times I'm like, okay, tell me your one or two or three biggest challenges that you've overcome. So I always say come from a place of a scar and not a wound, because if it's a wound, you're not quite healed, you might not want to teach it to other people. But if it's a scar, it doesn't bother you anymore. It's kind of a part of the past. But talk to me about, two of the hardest things you've gone through. Okay, tell me how you overcame them. Perfect. Now teach that to other people. And there's something so fulfilling about helping people through that. Anyone that I talk to, even if they're like scared to publicly do it, if I tell them, like, if someone came to you right now and they were dealing with this exact thing that you overcame,
Yeah.
how would you feel helping them?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I would feel so excited. Oh my God, I would love to do that. So why aren't you doing it? It lights you up. Why aren't you doing it? And I feel like most people think that purpose is like an end all be all final destination, but it's actually not. You don't have one purpose. I don't believe that you have one purpose. You have your purpose right now. And then somehow as you develop yourself into your next level, the next step of your purpose starts to show itself. And that's how I've kind of evolved from kind of the herbalist to the business strategist to the, she's empower coach and all of the things is because each time I was learning and developing myself more and more.
And I'm really glad that you said that about that because people do see it some, like some far off thing to attain. It's live on purpose and with purpose every day. I think that's such great advice. Now, you promote a soul first business, SOUL. So tell it as a model. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, when I think about a business, I like to think of purpose driven in a sense of it is so easy now more than ever to create digital offers and just show up online and sell and scale.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I like that is because you can share your story. We teach you how to turn it from an idea into going online and how to show up and be your authentic self. And that just monetizes so well. It's almost like you're becoming, and I don't like the term influencer, but you're becoming that figure that people essentially want to learn from. And so that's really why I like that soul model is because it's essentially becomes your brand, your story becomes your brand, and that's how you really branch out and help people. Now, that's not necessarily always for everyone. We've got students that are behind an incognito name, right? Because they're like, the community, I don't know about sharing my story. And they've made sales, they're selling, they're doing all of this stuff, which is really interesting. But I find that it's a very lucrative model and super easy to sell right now in the online space.
Yeah. Well, and that leads in nicely because and I sort of had glossed over it earlier, but I know, really advocate that hustle mode that we see, which, and again, no disrespect to them, but if you look at even like, Tony Robbins and Dean, everything is push, 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 drive, drive, drive. You've always got to be doing things in that sort of influencer, as you say, group. And I know your approach is, hey, that hustle is outrated. It's about relationship and that. So tell us a little bit about that more feminine.
Yeah, I mean, we've been taught once again, exchanging time for money, right? You have to hustle and that's not to say that there's no hustle involved in building a business, because the reality is there has to be. But working hard doesn't mean working 8, 10, 12 hours every single day, right? It's like I'm hyper focused on the tasks that I need to get done. So I'm constantly moving the needle forward. But it's okay if it's 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe sometimes 3 or 4 hours, and that's like a more extensive day. For me, it's about finding that balance of I love to do what I'm doing. But it's also discipline over motivation,
Yeah.
right? I find that the hustle culture is a little too disciplined and just do it, even if have are like, for example, people are still stuck in scarcity and they're hustling, and they could be I had a conversation actually yesterday in our community, and one of the ladies was asking, I feel like I'm not progressing in my business. And I asked her, how many hours are you spending on your business a week? And she said like 15 to 20 hours. I was like, oh, that's a lot of hours in your business. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing in those 15 to 20 hours? And so in our minds, we typically think that just because I'm counting the hours, it's going to eventually work and all of the things. But when I broke it down and we broke down what her hours are spent, she's doing nothing.
Yeah.
And it's not that she's not doing anything as in laziness. It's not anything that's moving the needle forward. And what she can be doing in a fraction of that time could pivot, like to move her forward. So it's really the common phrase of working smarter, not harder, because I totally believe in the hustle, but
Yeah.
it's the definition of hustle in terms of the amount of hours that you're putting in, really.
And again, it sounds like so much of what we're talking about comes back to being more intentional about how we live our lives, right? How we run
Absolutely.
our businesses. Just we flail around and, as you say, put in the hours, but I'm working, so, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and yet we're spinning our wheels. So I like that.
Well,
Now,
because you worked in corporate, right? So when you worked in corporate, let's just say it was almost like a 9 to 5 or something. How many hours would you say in your day, Cindy, you were actually always working?
yeah. Well, I mean, and I think I was a little different that way because I tended to, I would be very concentrated and now, granted, part of that came for the wrong reasons. I can totally confess because I was always a last minute Charlie, right? Even did well in school and pushed ahead, but because of that, I was concentrated and focused when sort of the chips were down to be able to, and definitely had a big balance. But I totally agree. That mindset, oh my gosh, in the legal community, people running around in circles with busy work, busy work, busy work, as opposed to finding more efficient way. And not the least of which is litigation itself, to be honest, rather than finding cooperative models to come up with resolutions that made far better sense for everybody. Everybody's looking for the fight, right? For exerting that power. So, yeah. No, and I want to circle back to the money piece because I think, before we sign off, I'd be remiss if I didn't. We talked about mindset, and I think one of the blocks for many people about, stopping them from achieving their full success is baggage around money. I certainly had it. I know I grew up in a low rental sort of apartment complex, first in our extended family to go to post-secondary. So I had a lot of baggage around money and what it meant. So, what advice do you have around building a healthy money mindset, I guess, for greater financial?
Yeah, so I mean, I totally resonate with this too. You mentioned I lived out of my car at one point. I grew up in community housing, so scarcity mindset was very, very real, right? The poor mindset. There was no entrepreneurs or very successful people around me. Where I started to learn that behavior is I had to release a lot of the beliefs I had about money, right? I find that when you don't have a lot of money, you think money is the root of all problems because you probably saw your parents, like I did, fighting about money and all this stuff. So you started to hate it.
Yeah.
You started to see, evil people of the world run the world with money and all of this stuff. So you have this negative association with money. But for me, when I started to shift and be like, no, wait, let me focus on the amazing people that did have money and created transformation, right? When you think about King Solomon and all of those ones who did have money, who did create change in all of those, I started to just pivot the way I looked at money. And that was my very first step is don't look at it as bad. And then when I started to shift how I looked at it, I almost got this feeling of like, I have a duty to try to make more money to be like money in the right hands makes change happens. And so that's kind of where it really started in that pivotal mindset shift is because deconstruct everything that you've learned about money because it's not the root of all evil. Yes, there are people that are evil and all the stuff, and that's why we're tested on this earth. But then no, money can be so beautiful. Money is frequency, money is energetic, money is a currency. There's a reason why it's called currency. And you can use that to your advantage to help people. So it's like when people are saying, I don't remember the last time, for example, that I ever said I can't afford it.
Yeah.
Right. And how many people say that versus, no, how can I make this work? If it's really important to me, how can I make it work? And you're coming from a place of solutions versus restrictions on yourself.
Oh, I'm so glad I asked you that question to wrap up because that is such a game changer for our listeners. And I'm smiling because in our household it was the same thing. I finally hit that because I used to associate money with greed and with all kinds of negativity. And then I got totally out of that scarcity mindset. My husband kept saying to me all the time, "Where do you think all this money's coming from?" And I'm like, "I just trust that it will. I just trust that it will." And it did. So this has been a fabulous conversation. My gosh, it's a good thing we both speak quickly because we've covered a lot of ground. Tons more to cover. We'll have to have you back sometime. And I normally like to end by asking, what is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've had in your life? Doesn't have to be about what we've been talking about, but one of those aha kind of moments for you.
You might appreciate this, but one of the biggest shifts that I've learned is communication. When I shifted the way I saw communication, because we hear a lot that oh, just talk it out, just talk it out. But when I actually learned effective communication in a sense of I approach every conversation thinking about their energy, not mine, right? Without coming in guarded or all of the stuff. It's like everything shifted in business, in love, in, repairing the relationships with my family members and becoming better than ever. That was one of the big mindset shifts that I find is not normally talked about is just shifting my definition of communication and how I approach the conversations. And that allowed me to be okay and excited about vulnerability and sharing that vulnerability with others, which improved our communication and shifted so much.
Oh my gosh, you just so beautifully encapsulated the driving force behind the art of feminine negotiation and why
Negotiation, that's what's funny. Yeah.
I love that. It's just that, the bringing that coming from a place of truly seeking to understand and to listen as the basis for communication, right? And coming, I think you said, from a place of love. And it is such a game changer. So, so beautiful. Where can people learn more about you, Tanya?
Yeah, so great question. So Tana the Herbalist is my brand. That's what I'm known for. You could find me on Instagram. I'm super active there. My website, really across all social platforms. That's people could probably just type it in and find me.
And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. So don't panic if you're listening and you're like, I love Tanya, but I didn't catch that. It'll be in the show notes, and it's worth go and check it out. Loads of great value. And thank you so much, Tanya, for joining us today and sharing.
Thank you. And Cindy, I actually wanted to mention just for your listeners, because I absolutely love this episode. For anytime someone listens, I love to kind of gift them something. So what I've created is I created a Power Pillar audio series. It's 3 audios. It's pretty quick and simple to listen to, but so transformational. And I usually only keep those for my premium coaching clients, but I'll happily gift it to your listeners. And all they have to do is they just DM me on Instagram. The handle is TaniaTheHerbalist.com, Tanya with an I. And just DM me CEO negotiation, right? And then from there, I'll send it to them for free. They can listen in and then get access to it as a thank you.
That's awesome. So again, Tanya the Herbalist, DM, and what is it?
Negotiation.
CEO negotiation. So, and again, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well. So don't panic if you haven't got it. So again, thanks so much for being here.
Of course.
Listeners, I'm sure you got lots of value from this episode. There was just so much packed there. I mean, we covered everything from money and finance to scarcity mindsets to showing up in your power, both personally and professionally across the spectrum. And thank you for playing along, Tanya, and dropping so many beautiful gems under all of those various categories. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done that, but also give the gift of sharing. Share this episode with other people in your life that you care about. These are the kind of lessons that anybody can benefit from. So make sure to share this episode. And before we sign off today as well, if you're looking to level your negotiation skills to negotiate a better life, feel free to check out. I've got my signature one-on-one mastermind and VIP, or online and group if you want something lower key to dip your toe in, so that you can better leverage your innate power to get more of what you want and deserve. And if that sounds interesting, check it out at artoffemininenegotiation.com. Make sure to grab my book of the same name, The Art of Feminine Negotiation, if you haven't done that yet. And that is a wrap for this episode. Until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve, from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care.